Hey everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the midweek hump day edition of Today in Sports Betting. And we're going to take a look at soccer, footy, the beautiful game out there on the pitch. And who better to take a look at it with somebody that actually knows what the hell they're talking about, which would not be me. He is my partner. You know him, you love him. It is the one, the only Scott Reichel. Scott, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. It's definitely nice to see more soccer leagues starting to open back up. I know the BPL, for example, starting today. You've had some Serie A stuff over the weekend. More particularly the Coppa Italia, which was a tournament, so they actually haven't had any domestic matches yet, but that will be resuming sometime later this week. Bundesliga is still in full effect, even though Bayern officially clinched the championship yesterday. And other than that, though, definitely nice to see sports starting to open up a little bit more internationally.
Yeah, we were supposed to be joined by Valdez Pon. Valdez Pon's our soccer expert over there at Winners and Winers, and he got hung up signing paperwork in Europe, which I guess is a thing. So he'll be with us next week. So
believe it or not, I heard that Europe also uses paper. Believe it or not, in case you were worried about that, Scott.
I didn't know if they had like a rock and chisel or how that exactly worked. So yes, they're everything's up to date in Mallorca apparently. So Valdez sends his regrets. We'll have him on next week, he said confidently. So let's move on with us. Let's trudge forward here, Scott, because I know you follow the beautiful game quite closely. I know there's always a lot of great opportunities, some unique bets in soccer, especially European soccer. So I know that the big story this week is, of course, the EPL opening up their games, of course, with no fans, as are all the other leagues have empty stands. But we were talking before the show, and I know the big story in EPL this year is the complete domination of the Liverpudlians. Did you know that's what somebody from Liverpool was called, Scott?
I did not until you told me, but I know that they have a phenomenal soccer team.
Any famous bands from Liverpool you can think of?
Famous bands from Liverpool. I think of bands from the UK. I'm not sure if they're from Liverpool or not. Are the ones that the famous ones that I'm thinking of from Liverpool?
It's the Beatles.
Okay, that was not who I was thinking of. I was thinking Rolling Stones, but fair enough.
Rolling Stones, I believe, are from London. I think they went to art school together in London. So yeah, that's up until this year, probably the greatest thing to happen to Liverpool. And now they're going to take care of business in the EPL. So let's start with the basics, Scott. Where were they when the season stopped? How many games do they have left? How many are they going to miss? Are they going to play the full season out before will they play Champions League after this?
So the way the Champions League works is that some Champions League games are played in the middle of the domestic season.
That's right. I always forget that soccer does that, where they put their tournaments in the middle of the season, which you love it, you hate it. Not a horrible idea. I don't hate it. So did they Champions League already played then, or did we miss the Tournament of Champions, whatever it's called? What is it called, Scott?
So there's some interesting stuff that's going on with the Champions League because of the long and lengthy delay that's been going on because of COVID for the last couple of months. So the way that I understood is that they're going to be doing some type of makeshift tournament to kind of get everything back to normal in a way. So they're going to have a tournament with the remaining teams. I kind of think of how to explain it, because it's like a mini tournament inside of a massive tournament to try to get everybody back acclimated. At least that's what I believe is going to be happening. So I think it's a very unique circumstance just because they missed so many games to be played. But overall, what you really need to know about Liverpool is that every team or every other team in the EPL is basically over here, and Liverpool's all the way up here. And that's pretty much all that matters. It would have been an all-time bad beat if they didn't complete the season, because Liverpool is basically a 99.9% favorite to win the entire league. The only team that has a shot at catching them is Man City, and I'm pretty sure Liverpool basically needs to lose every single game moving forward, which is not going to happen, and they need Man City to win every game moving forward, basically. So as far as you want to know, Liverpool is the closest to clinching without actually clinching, and they can pretty much clinch as soon as possible if they are able to get some points over the upcoming few days.
So as a casual observer of soccer, Scott, let me ask you this. What makes Liverpool so good? Why were they head and shoulders above everybody this year? Is it defense? Is it offense? Great goalkeeping? Yes. What is all the above? What separates them from the pack? Because they've had this magical season. So why this year?
Well, last year they ended up winning the Champions League, so it's not just a matter of them suddenly becoming really good in domestic leagues. Last year they performed extremely well, but they actually got beaten out by Man City in the league, so they had a little bit of a cooler there, as they only lost one game last year in the EPL, and they still didn't win the championship. So they were phenomenal last year.
Did you say they lost one game?
Yeah, they tied a lot, so Man City ended up passing them in points. So
how many games they play, Scott?
they play a lot, somewhere in the 30s.
Okay. So losing one game out of 30, not too bad.
Correct, but unfortunately, the one game they lost to was to Man City. And Man City ended up passing them, and they ended up winning the league last year after Vincent Kompany scored in the final game to give Man City the win. So, yeah, Liverpool still had a phenomenal year last year despite not winning the domestic title because of the fact that they were able to win the Champions League, which is for the sake of international soccer, it's basically the Super Bowl. So Liverpool was phenomenal there. They beat Tottenham in the final in blowout fashion. And, yeah, it seemed like everything kind of switched for Liverpool once they ended up signing Jurgen Klopp as their manager, who was originally the manager in Germany for Borussia Dortmund. And he took over for Liverpool, and it's been just wins after wins ever since he took over.
If you're an EPL team, Scott, is it more important to win the actual EPL league, or is it more important to win the Champions League?
So if you're asking for my opinion, I think the Champions League is more important, just because you take the best of the best from pretty much all the main European leagues and throw them in. So your level of competition is significantly harder from the group stage onward. Where you can make the argument that the EPL, I mean, a couple teams are going to get relegated in almost every league you're in. So you have a couple of really bad teams, which should help boost your record, so to speak, because they're basically free wins on the calendar. Right. So I think the Champions League is more important when it comes to success. For Liverpool, though, kind of a tough question because they won the Champions League last year. They've had some success in the FA Cup in the past. They haven't won a domestic championship in, let's just say, a very, very long time. So as far as Liverpool's concerned, they're going to try to win as many trophies as possible. But I think winning the Champions League is definitely the crowning achievement that they've had. But winning the BPL shouldn't be that far behind.
So let's just review here real quick. They're going to finish up the EPL season. How many games do they have left? How many games are they going to play on the slate?
Well, that's kind of the important thing to keep in mind, is that when you talk about how many games they have left, a lot of it really isn't going to matter for Liverpool, just to be clear, because they basically are going to be a lock to clinch the championship with a couple of games to go. Okay. The main things that people need to keep in mind are the other spots. And when I say that, you have to keep in mind that the top four in the BPL end up going to the Champions League, and the fifth team, who's currently Man United, is going to go to the Europa League. So when it comes to the remaining schedule, some teams will be playing for stuff, some teams won't. Liverpool will not be playing for basically anything, probably about a week from now, because they would have already clinched the title by now. So keep that in mind when it comes to the remaining schedule. Liverpool could actually take a nap for the last couple of games, and nothing will change. They could literally pretty much throw every game on purpose, with the exception of one or two, and they still win the championship. So just
to be clear, what kind of domination we're talking about? Liverpool has played 29 matches this season. They're 27-1-1 for 82 points. Man City, like you mentioned, they're in second place. They've played 28 games, and they have 57 points. So there's a 25-point gap between first and second in the EPL. And if you go down further, between second and fifth, Man United that you were talking about, there's just a 12-point gap. So basically, they have a twice as big a lead between first and second as between second and fifth. So when you say complete domination, you're not kidding. This has been a historic run.
I mean, they're 27-1-1. So
27-1-1. That is correct.
You can't really go against that. By the way, just to touch one more thing upon the Champions League with what I was talking about before, just in case somebody were confused with the mini tournament. It's going to be held in Lisbon, and the final is going to be on August 23rd. UEFA confirmed the final stages of the Champions League will be held in Lisbon as it was originally planned. However, there's also going to be some type of mini-tournament from the quarterfinals onward, which a lot of people might not have been aware of as they just completely forgot about it because that was announced a little while ago. But the round of 16 matches are going to be completed in early August, and you're going to have the couple of rounds there in Portugal. So, yeah, it seems like UEFA's kind of doing whatever they can to try to fix, whatever type of tournament they had to try to keep it afloat. And, yeah, both the Champions League and Europa competitions were suspended before the completion of the round of 16. And for that reason, they're going to continue it from the 16 onward in this little mini tournament in Portugal. So that's basically just catching people up on what's going to happen there.
Okay. All right. Very good. And is there anybody? Is Liverpool going to be head and shoulders above everybody else for the Champions League? I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I'm sure we'll be back to talk about that quite a bit. But as it stands right now, is there anybody? Is Bayern going to give them a run for their money? Is there any team there in the Bundesliga, in Serie A? Is there anybody that can compete with this team right now?
Well, if it's going to be from anybody from Serie A, it would be Juventus, who, they got Ronaldo just to add extra ammunition to their already phenomenal team. The main thing that you have to wonder, though, with regard to all of these really solid teams that are left in the Champions League is a couple of things. One, Liverpool, who is absolutely dominant, you have to really wonder about just, I don't want to say chemistry, but you got to wonder just how well they're going to be playing in comparison to how they played before. And the thing is, Liverpool is in such a nice rhythm. You're 27-1-1, and now you have to take a couple months off. Are they going to potentially look a little bit rusty? Are they going to look maybe less fluid than they did before? A lot of questions that will probably be answered at some point during the weekend as Liverpool will resume action, and we're actually going to be talking about that match later on in this video. But if I had to pick one team that probably has a say against them, it would actually be one of their league counterparts, and it would be Man City. And I think Man City is just so deep, and they play such a possession-driven style of football that I think they could potentially beat Liverpool because they thrive on pretty much keeping possession for at least 60-something% of every single match they play. So I think if there's one team that could give Liverpool a run for their money in the Champions League, I think Man City definitely has a shot. And the overall, in terms of just the Champions League itself, I think Liverpool definitely is the best team. And I think there is a reason why they are priced as one of the favorites to win the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing in Portugal is going to only be over 12 days. So you have to wonder if fatigue will play a factor or if anything like that. Of course, Barcelona is definitely worth mentioning. But because Barcelona, if you ended up watching them yesterday, they didn't look great yesterday against one of the worst teams in the league. Anytime you have Messi, Griezmann, and Suarez, assuming that all three are actually healthy, Barcelona definitely needs to be in the conversation. So I think Barcelona's also got a shot. So I'm not going to immediately say that Liverpool is a lock to win the Champions League because that is going to be a lot harder to defend as champions. But at the end of the day, should be a very, very entertaining final 16 with all of the elite level talent in all the elite teams that I mentioned. So it should be a very interesting competition.
Okay, so under normal circumstances, how many teams would be in the Champions League in that tournament there?
So the Champions League, the way that you should understand is that it starts out in group stages. So you have multiple groups with 4 teams, and you have a couple of teams from other leagues, for example, the Scottish leagues, and you have some other leagues.
I've seen Russian teams in there too.
Correct, yes. You have some of those teams. Then you end up playing the group stages until you end up past the groups, which is going to be
the knockout round.
Correct. So the top 2 in each group end up making it to the next round, and then you start to have the knockout stuff. So for the sake of the resuming Champions League starting in August, you're going to have the final 16, and you're going to work from there.
The final 16, so they've already played part of this tournament? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. They already played up to the 16, and then COVID completely just suspended play, and they decided to just continue where they left off.
And Scott, is it the previous year's standings that count, or is it the current standings when you're having the tournament?
I'm sorry, what do you mean when you say?
Well, in other words, is it how they finished in their leagues last season, or is it how they are currently set up in their leagues when the tournament starts? In other words, if they played half of their games, is it the top 4 teams at the time that tournament starts, or is it the top 4 teams from last season?
No, it's based on last year's results.
Okay.
So the top 4 teams in the final standings of the EPL, for example, after they finish this season, the final 4 teams are automatically granted a spot in next year's championship.
Okay, perfect. All right, so that explains that, and I'm sure a lot of these questions are very basic. A lot of people watching probably already know the answers, but I'm just trying to, number one, answer questions that I have, and that hopefully some of our less experienced soccer viewers will have as well. So thanks for being patient with me as I try to play a little bit of catch up here as far as the soccer situation goes. And
it's all good. I know that some sports books actually have listed the Champions League odds to win. At least I saw in the past. I'm not sure if that's still up.
I'm looking. I don't have it at the couple that I've looked at. I didn't know if you had any odds there.
Well, I know for a fact before COVID suspended play, it was pretty much a co-favorite situation between Barcelona and Liverpool. Barcelona, I believe, being the slight favorite, just based on the fact that Barcelona, when healthy, I think talent-wise is just a level above everybody else, in my opinion. So,
have there been any big upsets in the tournament so far? Is there any teams that you thought would go on to the round of 16 that have not made it, that didn't make it?
The truth is that you might have one team here or there that didn't expect to make it that far, but in terms of the actual breakdown in itself, I really am not totally surprised by pretty much all of the teams that are still
got all the big hitters. You've got Juventus, and you've got Barcelona, you've got Liverpool and Man City, and so none of the big contenders have been knocked out yet, basically.
Not really. I know that just based on looking at all the teams that are listed here, Bayern's definitely going to try to make a deep run. I mean, Barcelona is still being in. It's not a surprise to anybody. You have a couple of surprises, but I would say nothing just shocking to say the least. I guess it's a little bit surprising that Atalante, for example, got in, and Valencia getting in is a little bit of a surprise. But I know Red Bull Salzburg ended up getting in from the Bundesliga, joining Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. And Salzburg hasn't made it this far in a while, so good for them. But in terms of Serie A, Napoli got in, which is, I guess, technically surprising, though they have had a decent team in the past, along with Lyon in the French league. Yeah, I would say that there aren't really that many surprises. I'd say the biggest surprise is probably Atalante getting in. But for the most part, a lot of familiar faces, to say the least.
Okay, very good. And I know that sums that answers a lot of questions. It looks like, and I'm looking at the schedule here, so the round of 16 is going to resume at the 7th of August, and like I said, conclude there on.
By the way, sorry, quick correction. I accidentally said Salzburg. That's the Red Bull in the Austrian league. I meant Leipzig, who we've talked about in the past. So my apologies on that. I flipped the Red Bull teams in my head.
There's 2 Red Bull teams?
Yes, you have a Red Bull team in the Austrian league and a Red Bull team in the German league. So Leipzig made it into the Champions League Sweet 16, so to speak, and I accidentally said Salzburg. So my bad on that.
Jeez, I can't believe I didn't catch that.
I know. I caught it myself because I realized that something about what I said didn't sound right, and yeah, that's one of them. But yeah, my bad.
Doesn't New York have a Red Bulls team too?
Yes, I actually root for them. They are the New York Red Bulls, and they are wildly mediocre. But they, yeah, I was rooting for them back when they were the Metro Stars, so they go way back.
You have trouble with your teams. You've got the Red Bulls. You've got
the only team I got consistent. That's the Yankees. That's pretty much it. And even the Yankees haven't made it to a World Series in roughly 10 years. So it's been an interesting time for me.
Scandalous. All right, so we'll talk. I'm sure we'll be back to talk a little bit more about this as that date approaches. How many games they have left here in the EPL and the Bundesliga, roughly, Scott? How many weeks do we have left?
How many weeks?
Yeah,
Well,
games start.
Usually you play around 1 to 2 games a week. Usually around one. But I know that the EPL is going to try to condense its schedule a little bit to try to make sure they actually finish the games relatively normal to the average finish date. So you should be seeing a little bit more action than normal. Usually
Okay.
get roughly 1 game a week or so. But the EPL is trying to give you constant action to try to finish it on time. For the sake of how many games do you have left? Uh, Really not many, if I'm being honest, because they were already pretty close to finishing. But based on the amount of games, I'd say give or take 10. So just keep that in
Okay.
mind.
So they're going to play. They're going to play pretty much right up until the time this starts. There won't be a lot of downtime between the end of the leagues and the start of the Champions Tournament.
For the most part, yes. Now, just to answer your question, by the way, there are 92 matches still to be played overall by all teams in the Premier League. So yeah, you don't really have many games left
Okay.
for
All
this
right.
season.
All right. Very good. Okay. So that kind of catches us up to date. That's lets us know. And is everybody up and running now in Europe, Scott? Are there any of the big leagues that have not resumed play? Is this pretty much the last one?
No, because the French league, Ligue 1, is still currently suspended, and it's not looking likely that they are going to resume. There's actually a potential, I don't want to say lawsuit incoming, but there's something that's going on with regard to the relegation teams. And now some of the teams that are currently being relegated are having issues with the, I don't want to say the commissioner, but pretty much the executive board, the administrative board for Ligue 1, claiming we shouldn't be relegated. We didn't have enough games to get ourselves out of relegation. This isn't right because, of course, as people know, the most important part for a lot of these smaller teams is just staying in the top league for whether it's just broadcasting rights, etc. And if you go to the lower leagues, you're going to lose a pretty decent amount of money. So that's a big issue. It seems like it's going to happen is it seems like the league's going to be shut down for the most part. So the French league is as far as mainstream soccer, it's pretty much the only mainstream league that has not opened yet again, and I expect it not to open for the rest of the season.
Is it fair to say the French soccer league is the equivalent of MLB in the United States?
I guess, to be honest, I thought you were going to make a French surrender joke, so that took a little bit of a different turn than I thought it
No,
was.
I was actually going to go with they're on strike. I was actually going to go with instead of surrender, I was going to go with the French teams being on strike, which it seems like France is on strike a lot. So
That works too. But yes, the French league, needless to say, seems like it has a lot of pessimism moving forward because it doesn't really look too good. But overall, the French league not really looking too great at this point in time. Liverpool, for the record, I was right. I said around 10. They have about 9 games left.
Any French teams still left in the Champions League?
Yes, you actually have a couple, which is going to be very interesting because I'm not really sure how they're supposed to have any type of warm-up matches, so to speak.
Right.
They don't have any domestic games. For the French league, you have PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, which is the best team in the Ligue 1 every single year. So they're always in there. You also have Olympique Lyon, who's in there, kind of a surprise. They usually don't make it this far in the Champions League. So for the sake of the French league, they actually have 2 representatives, and I have no idea how they're supposed to practice for the Champions League.
Okay, good enough. I'm just trying to think. With this, would you like to see this in any American sports? Like, I guess baseball is really the only one it would work in. Maybe basketball. I guess hockey would be probably the one that would be the closest, right?
For what?
Where you'd have competitive international teams and everything like that.
Yes. If I had to pick anywhere where that would be somewhat realistic, I would have to assume, at least for a competitive perspective, I'd have to assume hockey, just because the nature of the sport tends to lean more towards just randomness, so to speak. And
Right.
I know that the Russian league is very huge in hockey, along with the entire country of Canada. Not to mention, you also have all the other Eastern European countries. So if I had to assume any sport that would have some type of situation like that, probably would be hockey. You can argue baseball, maybe, if you have the Dominican Republic and stuff like that. But
Right.
those would mostly be prospects. And I think that, especially based on what you've seen out of the farm systems in the MLB, along with the international competitions. I'd say a lot of people from the Dominican Republic who are really good as youngsters go to the majors. So it would pretty much just be a bunch of future prospects versus current MLB players. I think that would probably turn ugly. But I think hockey would probably be the most competitive if you were going to be adding an international component.
Well, and I guess they do have the WBC. I guess they do have the World Baseball Classic that they play every couple of years down there before spring training. I mean, during spring training, basically.
Well, you throw in MLB players from those respective countries.
Right, and that's what makes it competitive. Because you've got current MLB players that are playing for their country of origin, or
that's what the Olympics was for hockey, also, because you used to just have NHL players going back to their countries. And
and no matter what sort of nebulous connection you have through your great grandmother, once stopped for a long train trip going through a certain country, and that's good enough for you to play. I mean, some of those lineages seem a little sketchy there when you've got, especially with some of the lesser countries, when you've got guys playing for, like Italy or the Netherlands. You're like, how does that work? And
you've had issues with that in soccer in the past, where some players switch nationalities at some point. I remember that happened a while back with Diego Costa, who was the star striker on Atletico Madrid and Chelsea, and he originally played for Brazil. And then one year he just decided, you know what, I'm going to go with Spain now. And he just switched to Spain right before the World Cup, and he ended up playing with Spain.
And what did he claim as lineage? Do you remember?
I believe he did have some type of family lineage to both countries.
Right.
He just chose to play for Spain after switching. But I do remember that was a little bit of a controversy. I believe that was 2 World Cups ago, I think. But that definitely came up in conversation where some people were outraged that he chose to play for Spain instead.
Hey, Scott, before we get into the games, I know you're anxious to do that, but one more quick dumb question. World Cup this year?
No.
World Cup is it the Winter Olympics year? What does it coincide with?
It's every 4 years. So the way that it works is that you have every 4 years, and then in between the 2-year gap, the midpoint, you usually have the Europa League. You have the Europa Cup, so to speak, where all these international teams in Europe play against each other in this European World Cup type of tournament.
Is that this year?
I believe it was supposed to be this year, but it ended up getting canceled.
So they are on even numbered years. So basically, for us Olympic fans, the World Cup is going to coincide with the Winter Olympic years.
Yes, that was my interpretation. But the next World Cup is in 2022, and it's supposed to be in Qatar, which I know. Which is now a huge controversy because there's been rumors of some bribery that happened with the FIFA officials. They might end up moving the World Cups. There's a lot of stuff going on.
It seems like it's even gone past a little bit of the rumor stage, that it's pretty much a fait accompli, isn't it?
Correct. So you might have to have a new location and stuff like that. But the Euro Cup was supposed to be this year, and that has been canceled.
I'm sure that is a very heartbreaking situation where these guys may not have to go to Bahrain and play when it's 118, 116 degrees, something like that.
Yeah, there are some weather issues involved in addition to all the bribery charges. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be unpacked. But that's for another year.
That's right. We have 2 years to get ramped up and angry about that. So we'll bite our tongue.
Assuming America actually qualifies this time around. We'll see.
Hey, Scott, let's make some money on soccer this week. What do you like, buddy?
First of all, just to say there's a lot of different games this week, naturally, because you have more leagues opening up. But the one thing that I'm going to say is just because you have a lot of options for soccer doesn't mean you should be betting on every match, especially after you have a lot of teams who have had, I'd say, a very small period of time to publicly get reacclimated with their teammates. I know that they've been practicing, so to speak, and whatever. But I think you can agree that there's a big difference between practicing for about an hour and change and actually playing a full 90-plus minute match. So I think you should, I'd say, hold off on immediately betting your entire bankroll on soccer until you actually see some teams play since returning, and just to understand how well they've been playing lately. I'm going to start out, though, in the Spanish League, and I'm actually going to be going to a play that ended up losing for me over the weekend, which was pretty upsetting, as I had Real Madrid to win. I had Real Madrid to win and to score to win to nil, I should say, against Eibar, and they ended up giving up a goal in the second half as they were up 3-0. They ended up losing. However, I will be going back to Real Madrid, and they're actually going to be playing in a pretty intense game tomorrow as they end up taking on Valencia. Valencia, as I mentioned before, is one of the shockers to make it into the Sweet 16 in the Champions League. They're currently 8th in La Liga, so they've been pretty middle of the pack. Barcelona currently in first place, Real Madrid in second place, as they are 5 points back. However, Barcelona has played an extra game, so Real Madrid's in must-win territory to even keep pace with Barcelona, who won yesterday. Real Madrid at home is 10-4-0. They're undefeated, and they've scored 30 goals in 14 home games, whereas Valencia is awful on the road. They are 3-7 on the road in 13 road games, so not great. I like Real Madrid to win and both teams to score. They've had at least 3 goals combined in 8 of their last 10 meetings. Both teams have scored in 9 of their last 10 meetings. Valencia has allowed 1 goal to Real Madrid in each of the last 18 meetings. And Valencia is awful on the road, and Real Madrid's really good at home. So for that reason, Valencia, it is worth mentioning, is averaging at least 2+ goals allowed on the road this season. So I think you should see a lot of goals. I think Real Madrid should score at least 2. I think Valencia should score at least 1 because offensively they are pretty decent. And for that reason, I think you should see Real Madrid win this game around 2-1. So I like Real Madrid to win and both teams to score at +175 on Fox Bet.
Okay, very good. And that game, just for the record, goes off at 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow on Thursday. So
yeah, so I'm going to start there because the other games I'm going to be talking about are going to be during the weekend, but I do have one game for tomorrow that I think does possess some value.
So that's your little midweek tidbit there, a little jack to get you build that bankroll up as you head to the weekend. So Scott, you're telling me I should not load up on the Man City game against Arsenal this afternoon?
Probably not. I still think Man City is going to win because Arsenal's been pretty underwhelming so far this season. In the standings, Arsenal, historically speaking, have been one of the best teams in the BPL for the last couple of decades. Have they won many championships? No, but they have won a couple, and they have been solid. However, Arsenal, very, very down year. They're usually in Champions League or in at least Europa. They're in 9th this year, so they're going to be missing everything. Very, very down year for Arsenal. And Man City, they're just phenomenal. So I think Man City should win today I don't want to say easily because you're not really sure exactly on how well they're going to look or how sharp they're going to look. But if I had to put money on it, I would take Man City.
All right, and Man City is minus 285 straight up, minus 1.5 if you wanted to play the run line there, and so that's.
I would consider it, but at the end of the day, I feel like you're better off waiting to actually see how good the teams look in their first game publicly in months. I think you'll agree with me on that one.
Absolutely. We waited this long. We can wait a little bit more to get kind of a read on some of the teams. Now, having said that about making sure that we wait and get a read, I bet you've got an EPL play from this weekend, don't you?
Actually, I have 2 for this weekend, which I'm going to be getting into. The first one's it's kind of going to be a little bit hypocritical because I just said you should be waiting on certain teams to play multiple games, and I have a couple plays on the EPL. The first one's going to be on Sunday, actually, and it's going to be between Liverpool and Everton. And in this game, I like Liverpool to win to 0 at +190 on DraftKings. A couple reasons why I like this play. First of all, Liverpool is by far the class of the entire league. We've talked about this before. This team's 27-1-1. I know that you have a layoff for a couple months and you have to wonder how sharp this team's going to look. I think you can agree from a talent perspective, you should probably assume that Liverpool, which is on pace for one of the best seasons in the history of the league, should be in a pretty solid spot to beat the number 12 team in the table. So I think Liverpool should win this game. To go into more detail on the win to 0 aspect, Everton, even though they're at the home team for this game, really has not been great offensively at home this season. They've scored 19 goals in 14 home games, which is really underwhelming. They're averaging less than 1.5 goals per home game, where Liverpool has only allowed 9 goals in 14 road games. So Liverpool's been great defensively. They've been really good, and Everton has been pretty mediocre offensively at home this season. So I'm a little bit skeptical on how Everton will be able to perform against arguably the best defensive team in the entire league. Plus 4 of the last 5 meetings have ended with less than 3 goals. So when these teams get together, goals come a little bit at a premium. and I think Liverpool should win this game probably around 1-0. So for that reason, I like Liverpool to win to 0 at plus 190 on DraftKings.
All right, and just just to give you an idea about the difference that it makes versus just the straight odds. If you wanted to just take Liverpool, you're laying minus 172. So you're getting a lot of value there as you try to get the shutout.
Correct. Now it is worth mentioning here. Everton has been very underwhelming when it comes to defense, as they've given up 46 goals in 29 games, which is, let's just say, for lack of a better word, bad. And Liverpool has given up 21 goals, which is the fewest in the entire league. So I simply think that Liverpool should be able to get at least one across. You asked me a question before on why Liverpool is so good and didn't really talk about it. It's
Right.
mostly a cop-out answer. They're phenomenal on offense, and they're really good on defense, and it's pretty tough to beat them. Just to put into perspective, Man City's number one in goals scored with 68. Liverpool is 66. So Liverpool is the second best offense in the entire league, and they have the best defense in the entire league. So needless to say, they tend to win games, and I expect them to do the same on Sunday, and I don't think Everton should be able to score. Everton could score one goal, which would be upsetting. I don't see them scoring two, and I think that scoring one is definitely not a given. So for that reason, I'll take the extra value there at plus 190 on Liverpool to win to 0.
Okay, very good, very good. Sounds solid. Now let me ask you a quick question here, Scott. With the game that Arsenal is playing here this afternoon, they play again on Saturday. Any chance of picking up a little value there on Brighton as Arsenal plays a couple of games just 3 days apart there? Maybe those legs aren't quite as in mid-season form as they normally would be. Could we pick up a little value there on the underdog Brighton team?
Oh, it's definitely possible. It's actually funny because you read my mind. That's actually the third play I'm going to be giving out for this game. It is worth mentioning that I did notice something. I was watching the Barcelona game yesterday as they ended up winning pretty easily. It really wasn't a sweat at all. They had a couple of breaks in the middle of the game, not even halftime. It was called cooling breaks, and they were just giving all the athletes water at some point in the first half and the second half. So I guess the leagues are trying to make more accommodating conditions for the players who went from 0 to 100 when it comes to not playing soccer at all to playing a full 95-minute match. So there have been some cool down breaks and stuff that's been added to try to make it easier on the athletes. Having said that, a 3-day turnaround is definitely not ideal for these type of athletes, and I definitely think that Arsenal should struggle a bit on Saturday. However, I'm not going to take Brighton to win the match. But one thing I do like, it's a pure value play. I like the final score of Arsenal-Brighton to be 1-1, which is available at plus 600 on Fox Bet. The draw is roughly plus 240, give or take, and I think that 1-1 definitely makes a lot of sense there for plus 600. To put it into perspective, 2 of the last 3 matches between these two teams have ended in a 1-1 draw. Brighton has tied 6 in 6 of its first 14 home games, and Arsenal has tied in 8 of its first 13 road games. So both these teams tie a lot, and it is worth mentioning that both teams have also scored in each of the last 4 meetings. So both teams tend to score in this matchup, and both teams tend to tie in this matchup in general. Plus, Arsenal should be a little bit tired, and I think that Arsenal's the more talented team, but I do expect them to run out of gas a little bit in the second half. So for that reason, my value play of the weekend is going to be on Brighton Arsenal 1-1 draw, which is available at plus 600 on Fox Bet.
Okay. And just to clarify, in the European leagues and international soccer, they do not play any kind of extra time or shootout or anything like that at the end of 90 minutes. If the game is tied, it just goes down as a tie, right?
Correct. Now, that's just for the BPL or the domestic leagues. If you have some tournaments in there that you need someone to advance to the next round, then you might add a 30-minute extra time period with penalty kicks. For the sake of actual domestic regular season games, no, it just ends. It ends in a draw.
Similar to World Cup, if you're familiar with how that works, where you play an extra period and then it goes to penalty kicks, like you said, if a winner has not been determined.
From the knockout stages onward, yes.
All right, very good. Oh, so they do play in the opening rounds. They will play a tie as a tie.
Yes, because a tie is worth 1 point, and that counts towards the group stage.
Okay, very good. All right, so that gives us a couple of plays for the weekend. It gives you one for tomorrow. Anything else there cooking in the old Scott Cauldron?
For the most part, no. I was really looking around trying to find something. Uh, I mean, I'm not going to get mad at anybody who decides to bet on Barcelona as they end up playing later on this week, as they end up taking on Sevilla. However, Sevilla has been very good at home this season. I think that could be a potential trap spot for a draw. Barcelona, of course, the best team in the league. They've been phenomenal. I really wasn't that impressed with them yesterday, but they played one of the worst teams in the league, and they knew that they could win, so they basically looked like they were on autopilot for about half the game.
Right.
Sevilla, during the season, is third, so they're no slouch either. They're 7-5-2 at home, so they only have two home losses. And Barcelona is surprisingly 6-3-5 on the road. So 6 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses. Definitely not phenomenal results for Barcelona. So that's why I passed on them. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if Barcelona wins, of course, but you need to show me a little bit more consistency on the road before I back you to beat a top 3 opponent in your respective league.
Okay. All right. Very good. Maybe a little value there on Sevilla. If you want to take them to win, it would be plus 290.
Either to win or maybe draw potentially, but for the sake of that match, I'm just going to pass.
Okay. All right. Very good. And anything else at all on the radar screen for you?
Not really. I had decided not to go too in-depth on the Italian league because you still have some tournaments going on. Now you have domestic stuff going on. I'm probably going to break that down more in depth next week. But for the sake of the Italian league, a lot of teams simply just haven't played yet, and they've been playing in this tournament, and I'm not really sure how seriously some of these teams are even taking this tournament. So I'm not really going to read too much into it.
Okay. And I know, Scott, that, being sports fans, a lot of people like to watch the games they have action on. How's the access here in the States on the various leagues? Is they easy to find? Is it a ESPN situation? Do you have to dive deep into Reddit to find those threads? How does that work?
So the way that I understand is that if you want to actually watch games, the Premier League is the place for you. And the reason why I say that is that the Premier League has specifically announced that they are pretty much televising almost every single game that they have left on the schedule for fans. So NBC is going to be all over these games, pretty much almost every single game that they're going to have. Is it every game on TV? I don't believe every one, but a decent percentage should end up being on some form of NBC pretty much throughout the entire, say, month and change that we have left in the season. In terms of the other leagues, I ended up finding the Barcelona match on some random television channel yesterday, but I had to go digging. Fox might have maybe a game or two. I doubt it. But for the most part, I think NBC is your best bet for Premier League coverage.
And especially like NBC Sports, I would assume.
Yeah, NBC Sports or just regular NBC, you should have a decent amount of games on television over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, very good, man. You know what? As always, I learned a lot. I'm the first to admit that this soccer is not generally the sports that I follow. I certainly enjoy it, and I've certainly become a bigger fan since I've started doing this work. As a lot of our regulars back when we did the Deep Three, when they would put their plays up, we had some real good soccer bettors there as far as our viewers go. So I learned a lot watching those guys bet and kind of keeping track of how they did. I know we had one guy that was in the comment section a lot that loved to bet over under on corner kicks. Scott, any value there?
Well, I lost a live bet yesterday on corner kicks, so you're really all over me today. Yeah, I ended up live betting a Barcelona corner kicks in the second half as they ended up taking on the worst team. Logically speaking, when it comes to corner kicks, kind of a bad beat. I was up one corner on 2 separate occasions, and I was up one corner going into the 89th minute, and then I gave up a corner, and it ended up resulting in a tie. And unfortunately, I had a 3-way result and ended up losing there. The main logic here with corners is I think there's value on it, of course, if you find ways to compare teams and you think one team's going to have more scoring chances than the other. I think the main thing you should look into when it comes to corner kicks is time of possession. I think, needless to say, if you're going to get corner kicks, you need the ball.
Right.
And I think that if you're going to have the ball for about 60+% of the game, most of the time you should end up having an edge in corner kicks, which is why I was upset about my loss yesterday. I think Barcelona to have more corner kicks in the second half because they had 81% possession in the first half, and I knew that they would have the ball for pretty much the entire second half as well. I believe they had the ball for around, I want to say 70% in the second half, and they still only had 2 corners, and they gave up 2 corners, which was pretty upsetting. But in terms of these prop bets in soccer, we can go more in depth on those in the future. There's definitely some value on taking them. However, I think if you were going to look at taking some of these props, you might want to take a live line so you can try to get some gauge on how the pace of play is gone for the first, 20 minutes before you make a play.
I would assume also looking at corner kicks, you want to look at shots on goal as well, right?
Correct. I mean, most of the time you see a corner kick, it's because somebody tries a cross that ends up getting kicked out of bounds, or you have a save or a deflection that goes out of bounds. So there's a lot of scoring chances, a lot of attack-driven soccer. But, of course, usually you get more attacking chances when you have the ball for the majority of the time. So I think my main factor on that, some teams will have to play counterattacking, which definitely plays a factor. But needless to say, if you have the ball, your odds of having a corner kick or any of these drastically go up. So that's my thoughts on that.
Math checks out. Okay, good. All right, man. Well, that's some good picks there. And just to go ahead and go ahead and recap your picks there for anybody that's that joined us late, Scott. I think you got? You got three solid plays there. Go ahead and let us know one more time. Run those down for us.
Yeah. So this match is going to be tomorrow. I like Real Madrid to win and both teams to score plus 175 on Fox Bet. That will be between Real Madrid and Valencia. Other than that, I like Liverpool to win to 0 on Sunday against Everton at plus 190 on DraftKings. And I also like Brighton and Arsenal correct score 1-1, which is available at plus 600 on Fox Bet. If you want to be safer and play the draw, you can. I'm going to go for value there at plus 600, and that should be taking place on Saturday.
Very good. All right, man. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for carrying the weight here today, bud. Like I said, we thought we were going to have our other soccer sniper on there, so you had to step up and do double duty. Appreciate it as always, and good luck on all your plays. Good luck to all of our viewers that are going to tail your plays, and good luck to me who probably will tail at least one of those plays as well. I might even take a sniff just to have a little action, which is something I tell people to never do. But I gotta be honest with you, Scott. I'm bored. I'm betting bored around here. You know what I'm saying? Not a lot of stuff going on, so I might even put a little sniff on Man City against Arsenal here this afternoon and see what happens. So
I'm not going to stop you if you choose to do so. I think if you were going to play Man City Arsenal, for the record, by the way, I would probably take Man City halftime and full time. I don't know what the plus price is there, but you've seen the money line on Man City with draws, and as a third option, it's still like minus 270, 280. So I expect Man City to score at least one goal in the first half, probably score another goal in the second half. I'm not sure if Arsenal's going to score. So I think Man City should win the first half and the full game. So just keep that in mind if you want to try to cut into that juice. That's a lean. That's not an official play. That's just a lean.
Okay, very good. And I know that by the time we probably have these videos up, they will already know whether I've made a bad play or a good play. So
correct. So we're rooting for you.
Let's see what happens there. All right, bud. What we got going on tomorrow, Scotty?
We have a couple of things on the horizon, actually. We're going to be talking about some UFC coming up over the weekend. Right. And we actually have a special guest who's going to be making an appearance if you want to talk more about that, Scott.
We do. We have an old buddy of mine, a very, very good handicapper, veteran handicapper, been doing this for a long time. Used to host a show with Tony George there on Sirius XM. He is the Buffalo Wingman. If you're a fan of the podcast that I used to do when we first started off here at Winners and Winers, the Wingman was a frequent guest on there. He's out in Vegas, and we're going to check in with him. Just do a little quickie there at the top of the hour as we open up the show, find out how things are going on out there in Vegas, what's happening, how the crowds are doing, if anybody's in the sports books, and all that. And most importantly, we're going to find out how my money's doing because I always like him to go out there and check on my money because I tend to leave a lot of it when I go to Vegas. So we'll have a quick, we'll kind of have a boots on the ground live report in Vegas as Vegas gets reopened after the shutdown due to COVID-19. So, we're going to check in with the Buffalo Wild Man. Then we're going to have Winning Willie on to talk a little UFC. And I know, I don't want to give anything away, but I know you're a lot more excited about this weekend's UFC card than you were last weekend, right?
Yes. Well, just based on who's on the card, yes. In terms of the actual quality of the card last week, it actually was entertaining. And you actually watched some of it. Look at you.
I did. I made bets. I made bets and everything. You and I were texting back and forth during some of the matches. And of course, I had some plans later on, so I didn't get to watch the full card. But yeah, made some. I made a little money, made a little scratch there on the UFC.
Both did. So hopefully, we've converted you to the dark side after all this time.
It's no WWE, but you take what you can get. So
fair enough.
All right, and then Friday, we'll be talking. I think a little horse racing. I haven't actually got back. I haven't heard back from Curtis yet to see if he's going to be joining us, but we're hoping to talk a little horse racing on Friday, and of course our usual NASCAR show on a Saturday with Winning Willie, as well as we preview this week's Talladega NASCAR race on Sunday. So full week for us. As always, Scott, thanks for stopping by and co-hosting, man. Appreciate it. And literally, I tell you every day, I couldn't do it without you. Today, I really couldn't have done it without you. So
not gonna lie, I kind of wanted to see you do it without me. I feel like that would have been funny to watch. But yes.
Oh, I hear this Liverpool team is good, so they'll probably win. So you should bet them. Oh, minus 600. Yeah, nobody cares. Just bet them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been quite a show to see. So thanks for not being sick or anything today. I appreciate you doing the Stalker Show. And as always, I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers learned a lot as well. Make a little money, and that should be fun. And, of course, thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. As always, don't forget to stop by and check out the great content over there at winnersandwhiners.com and our sister site over at statsalt.com. If you want deeper dives into a lot of this soccer action, I know Valdez has some great articles up over there if you want to read Valdez's stuff. I know he has some good previews on a lot of these matches that are coming up, so make sure you stop by and check out our soccer content. And I know we've got esports is coming back. We'll be talking to Winning Willie. My son is actually playing one of the esports games. He's playing Valorant, which I guess is a brand new game that's just kind of taking the esports world by storm. So it was actually the answer to a trivia question yesterday, and I knew the answer. Scott, are you impressed? Like the question was, who just finished their beta test? And it's a multiplayer, shooter strategy game, whatever. And I knew the answer. It was unbelievable.
I'm very proud of you.
I know, right? So, all right. So until tomorrow, you guys have a great day, everybody. I am Scott Steen. Of course, he is Scott Reichel. And you are who you are. And go out there, have a little fun today, make a little money. And it's hump day. It's all downhill from here. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk a little Vegas, talk a little UFC. Until then, you guys take care. Have a great day. Everybody stay well. Have fun. Make some money. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.